Okie dokie. So, what happens when you don't know whether this piece of code, so in here, so within the try block, will throw either a number format exception nor an arithmetic exception? What do you do instead? Because sometimes you might not know ahead of time the exception that will be thrown. So in that case, then you need to use exception. So in here, so let's just replace all of this with exception. Now, exception should only be used when you don't know the exception type which is being thrown. So in here, let's have a look. We know that we will throw either a number format exception or an arithmetic exception. But if you don't know the exception type, you can always say catch exception and then E. So this should be handled differently, just like this, right? So if I throw something in here, which is nor the number format exception, nor arithmetic exception, so it's not going to fall in here. And this will be the catch all exception, catch all exception. So if none of these is catched, then any other exception which is thrown that we don't know about will end up in here. So let's have a look at this exception to understand what it is. So if I put my mouse in here and then click on it, so I'm going to press command and then click on it, and you can see the keyboard shortcut down below. So this takes me to public class exception, and I'm going to show you how to create your own custom exceptions in a second. But basically, the class exception and its subclasses are a form of throwable that indicates conditions that a reasonable application might want to catch. The class exception and any subclasses that are also subclasses of runtime exception are checked exceptions. Check exceptions, yada, yada, yada. And I'll come back to this in a second. But all I want to show you really is if I click on this icon in here, I want you to see, have a look. All of these, so subclasses of exception, 718. For you, it might be less or more, but have a look. So all of these are exceptions that can be thrown. Have a look. So the list is quite a lot, to be honest. And card exception. So this is from a different package. But if I search, for example, util, let's just see if there is anything on util. Have a look. So Java util, unknown format conversion exception, unknown format flags exception, zip exception. So if you are trying to zip something, then this will throw this exception. If I scroll up, there's a bunch more from util. So concurrent, data format, empty stack exception. So this is when you're dealing with data structures, which you're going to learn later. Illegal format argument exception, illegal format exception, input mismatch exception, malformed URI exception. And if I remove the package in here, the package filter, there's a bunch of other exceptions. So also if I search for number format exception, you can see that it comes from Java lang. So there's a bunch of these exceptions that can be thrown by your application, but you kind of don't need to know all of these exceptions, because if you don't know, you should use exception in here, and this will catch all of them, right? So here it would be fine for me to say, for example, just catch that. It's fine. It's the exact same thing. So let me just run it so you see what I mean. So here, if I put this in here and remove this, whoops, just like that, and then run this, you can see this is the exact same thing. But here, I'm actually catching all. So I'm not being specific whether it's going to be the arithmetic or the number format. So I'm saying whatever exception that happens in here, I want to catch all of them. But often it's better to be more specific if you know the type of exception that can be thrown. And the question that you might be asking now is, okay, so how do I know if a method will throw an exception, for example? Well, in this case in here, so you know that you cannot divide by 0, right? So this will throw an exception. Integer.parseInt. Let's have a look. If I click on this method, so I'm going to press Command and then go into this method, parseInt. You can see the keyboard shortcut down below. This method here says public static int and then throws, so throws number format exception. Well, by looking at this method, I know that it might or might not throw an exception. Therefore, I need to account for it. So this is how you know whether a method throws an exception or not. And we're going to learn more about this keyword in a second, but this is how you know whether a method will throw an exception and its exception. So in here, it's a number format exception. Therefore, it's absolutely fine for us to do this. So we know ahead of time, and also we can actually duplicate this. Oops, like this, and then put it here. And you see that because this is the exact same thing, it just basically says I can get rid of this. I can collapse all of these into that. But let me just say, for example, here, catch all, because the implementation was the exact same thing, right? And then system.out e.getMessage, for example. Now, I was saying that because we know the exception which is thrown, then we can be a little bit more specific. You're going to get plenty of examples on this, including the throws keyword. So this throws keyword in here. And if you have any questions, please do let me know. That's all for now. Catch me on the next one.